My ex-wife, who looked down on me for dropping out of high school, told me one day, "My new husband is a Harvard grad and a department head not like you." So I responded, "Well, he's unemployed starting tomorrow." 15 years of marriage, 15 years of unwavering dedication to my work, and 15 years of proving to myself that I was capable of more than the world once believed. Yet, in all those years, I never imagined I'd find myself face to face with my past in the most unexpected way. Rachel and I arrived at the grand ballroom of the Arcadia Hotel, the venue for Young Tech Core's 50th anniversary celebration. I adjusted my tie, a subtle reassurance to myself, while Rachel gracefully stepped out of the car, her champagne-colored dress catching the golden glow of the entrance lights. She looked stunning as always, poised, confident, and completely unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. As we made our way inside, a sea of well-dressed professionals, investors, and employees filled the space. The room buzzed with the kind of energy that only a corporate milestone could generate. Handshakes, polite laughter, and the clinking of glasses echoed through the air. I was about to greet a senior board member when I heard a voice I hadn't thought about in years, yet one that was still imprinted in my memory. A voice that had once carried scorn and arrogance, treating me as if I were beneath her. "Oh, wow, this can't be real." I turned, and there she stood, Olivia. The last time I saw her, she had walked out of our apartment, leaving behind nothing but a sharp-edged goodbye and an air of superiority. Now she was as polished as ever. Her sleek black dress accentuating the way she carried herself, full of self-importance. Her eyes, however, still held that familiar condescension. At her side was a man who could have walked straight out of a corporate magazine, tall, well-groomed, and with an arrogance that matched Olivia's. He barely glanced at me before offering her a drink. "Michael Carter," Olivia said, savoring my name like it was some relic from a past she had long outgrown. "I can't believe you're actually here." I kept my expression neutral. "It's been a long time, Olivia." Rachel, ever the pillar of grace, stood by my side, sensing the tension in the air. She didn't speak, but I could feel the way her fingers brushed against mine. A silent show of support. Olivia let out a small amused chuckle. "I figured you'd still be working in some factory or trade job, but I didn't expect you to be invited to something like this." Before I could respond, she flicked her wrist dismissively. "All right. Of course, maybe you're here as someone's +1 or working the event." It was as if the years hadn't passed at all, as if we were back in the cramped apartment where she told me she deserved better, that she needed someone with ambition, someone with status, and she had found him, the man standing beside her. "My husband, Nathan," she introduced him with an air of pride as if his existence alone validated her choices. "He's a Harvard graduate and the head of the corporate department at Young Tech Corporation. He's a big deal around here." Nathan, who up until that moment had remained half invested in the conversation, finally turned to look at me. He gave a small unimpressed nod, barely acknowledging my presence. Olivia smirked. "You know, Michael, it's funny. I used to worry about you after the divorce. I thought, what will he do without me? But now I see you're still managing." I knew exactly what she was doing. It wasn't enough for her to feel superior. She needed me to feel small. Rachel took a step closer, her presence grounding me. Olivia tilted her head, feigning curiosity. "So, what do you do these days?" I smiled faintly, letting her think she had control of the conversation. "Oh, a little bit of everything. I keep busy." She let out a dry laugh, still vague as ever. "Well, at least you're still working. Though I imagine not at Nathan's level. A Harvard graduate and a department head? That's what real success looks like." Nathan chuckled, finally giving me a full glance. "Yeah, it's a lot of work keeping things in order at a company like this. But then again, not everyone is built for it." They were practically reveling in their assumed superiority, so sure that I was still struggling, still clawing my way up some impossible ladder. That's when I said it. "Well, he's unemployed starting tomorrow." Silence. The words hung in the air, wrapping around them like a slow creeping fog. Olivia blinked. "Excuse me." Nathan's amusement wavered for the first time. I kept my expression unreadable. "You heard me." Olivia let out an incredulous laugh. "Michael, are you actually serious? Do you even understand what you're saying?" Nathan shook his head, grinning at Olivia like I was some pitiful comedian. "This guy's got jokes." "Olivia, I didn't realize your ex had such a wild imagination." But there was something else there now. A flicker of doubt in Nathan's eyes. Rachel squeezed my hand lightly, sensing the shift in power. I simply shrugged, adjusting my cufflinks. "Guess we'll find out tomorrow." For the first time that night, Olivia wasn't the one in control of the conversation. And judging by the way Nathan suddenly tensed, I knew I had already won. I wasn't always the man standing in that grand ballroom, holding my wife's hand while delivering a quiet but devastating blow to my ex-wife and her so-called perfect husband. No, The road that led me here had been long, filled with bruises, both physical and emotional, but every scar had been earned. As Olivia and Nathan stood there, their smug faces flickering with uncertainty after my unexpected words, my mind drifted back to the past, to a time when I didn't have the luxury of confidence, power, or even a clear future. The beginning of the fall. I was 17 when my world first started crumbling. My father, once a hard-working man with dreams of giving his family a stable life, lost his job during a company-wide layoff. He tried to hide his despair, but the tension in our tiny apartment became suffocating. The bills stacked up, eviction notices slipped under the door like silent threats, and the fridge grew emptier by the day. Meanwhile, my mother, the rock of our family, fell ill. I remember the first time she collapsed in the kitchen, her body too weak to hold itself up. I was terrified, but we couldn't afford hospital visits, let alone proper treatment. That was when I made my first adult decision. I dropped out of high school. It wasn't a choice I wanted to make, but one that felt inevitable. Someone had to keep the lights on. Someone had to make sure my mother had at least one meal a day. My father had already sunk into despair, drowning his frustration in cheap beer, and I knew if I didn't step up, we wouldn't make it. Olivia, love or convenience? Back then, Olivia and I were together. We had started dating in our final year of school, and despite my struggles, I thought she was my safe place. She used to whisper promises of a future where we'd make it together, where none of this hardship would matter. But when I told her I was leaving school to work, she didn't react the way I expected. "You're really dropping out?" she asked, her nose wrinkling in distaste. I nodded, trying to ignore the feeling of shame creeping up my spine. "I have to, Olivia. My mom's sick and my dad." I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "I can't just sit around. I need to help." She didn't say anything at first, just crossed her arms, looking away as if my words were too inconvenient for her to process. "You do know what this means, right?" I frowned. "What?" "It means you're going to be stuck in some dead-end job for the rest of your life." She scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "You really think you can build a future without a diploma? Without college?" Her words hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I told myself she was just frustrated that maybe she was scared for me too. I clung to that belief for a while, the long hard years. I worked any job I could find, loading docks, kitchen shifts, janitorial work, anything that put money in my pocket. It was brutal, but I refused to feel sorry for myself. During those years, Olivia and I drifted apart. I noticed the way she avoided inviting me to gatherings with her friends, how she never wanted me to meet her parents. I convinced myself it was because she was busy, that she still cared even when she started making little remarks about my worn-out shoes or how tired I always looked. Then one night, everything became clear. I had just finished a grueling 16-hour shift at a local factory when I decided to surprise Olivia. I hadn't seen her in a week, and I wanted to remind her that despite everything, I was still fighting for our future. I knocked on her door, and when it swung open, Nathan was standing there. I still remember the way he looked at me, like I was something he had stepped on by accident. Olivia was behind him wearing the hoodie I had given her, but her expression was cold. She didn't even hesitate. "Michael, we need to talk." I already knew what was coming, but I listened anyway. She told me she was moving on, that she needed someone who could match her ambition, someone who wasn't stuck in a dead-end life. Nathan stood there smirking as she delivered the final blow. "You and I were never going to work. I deserve more than this." I walked away that night. My hands clenched into fists, not out of anger, but out of sheer frustration. Frustration that I had given her my heart, my trust, and it had meant nothing. A promise to myself. That night, I made a silent vow. I would never let anyone look down on me again. I threw myself into work, but I also enrolled in night school determined to finish what I had started. Every sleepless night, every grueling hour at work, I reminded myself that I was more than my circumstances. I found mentors along the way, people who saw my potential, who believed in me when I barely believed in myself. One of them, Mr. Lawson, pushed me toward engineering, telling me I had a mind built for problem solving. And he was right. By the time I was 25, I had earned my degree in mechanical engineering. By 30, I had secured a leadership position at Young Tech Corporation. By 35, I was on the board. And at 42, I was standing in a ballroom looking at the woman who once told me I'd never be anything. Back to the present. Olivia and Nathan were still standing there, their laughter long gone. I could see the gears turning in Nathan's head, trying to piece together whether or not I was bluffing. Rachel, ever the composed one, simply smiled beside me, sensing that I had already won. Olivia shook her head. "You're lying." I smirked. "Am I?" Nathan forced a laugh. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I assure you, my position here is solid." I let out a small chuckle, shaking my head. "We'll see." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there with the first taste of the humiliation they had once so eagerly fed me. Tomorrow, the real reckoning would begin. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not according to the world, not according to Olivia, and certainly not according to the version of myself that once stood in front of a factory gate, unsure if I had a future at all. But here I was standing in an elegant ballroom wearing a custom-tailored suit, my wife's hand resting lightly in mine, and my former tormentors staring at me in disbelief. Olivia, my ex-wife, the woman who once dismissed me as a failure, and Nathan, the man she replaced me with who was about to lose everything. Yet none of this happened overnight. No. My journey had been long, painful, grueling, and at times nearly unbearable. And every step had made me the man I was today. When I first stepped into the factory, I wasn't thinking about success. I was thinking about survival. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, the rhythmic clanking of machines creating an almost hypnotic atmosphere. I was just another young worker in a sea of faces, all of us wearing the same grease-stained uniforms. I started at the bottom, assembling parts, cleaning machinery, doing the work no one else wanted to do. I never complained. Complaining wouldn't put food on the table. I worked hard, harder than anyone else because I had no other choice. The older men at the factory used to tell me, "Kid, don't kill yourself over this job. No one cares how hard you work," but I cared. Every bolt I tightened, every circuit I examined, every machine I repaired, I made sure to do it better than the last time because I wasn't just working. I was learning. I studied the way the machines functioned, asked the senior engineers questions whenever they'd let me, and spent my nights reading old technical manuals I found discarded in the break room. Slowly, I began to understand the inner workings of the factory, not just as a worker, but as a problem solver. And then one day, opportunity knocked. It was late, long after the usual shift had ended. Most of the workers had gone home, but I had stayed behind to help an old supervisor, Mr. Lawson, fix a failing machine. He was cursing under his breath, rubbing his temples as he stared at the malfunctioning equipment. "We're gonna need a specialist for this," he muttered, "and that's gonna cost money we don't have." I had been observing for hours, quietly taking notes in my head. I knew what was wrong. "Sir," I said cautiously, "I think I can fix it." He looked at me, skepticism clear in his tired eyes. You've been here what, 2 years? 3, I corrected, rolling up my sleeves. "Let me try." I had nothing to lose. He sighed but stepped aside. "Go ahead, kid. If you break it worse, it's your funeral." I worked fast, retracing the problem from the faulty wiring to a misaligned belt that no one had thought to check. 30 minutes later, the machine whirred to life. Lawson stared at it, then at me, then back at the machine. "Son of a, how the hell did you do that?" I shrugged. "Just been paying attention." From that night on, everything changed. Lawson took me under his wing. He taught me things beyond the factory floor: engineering principles, machine design, efficiency optimization. He made me see that I wasn't just meant to be another laborer. One day, after I had successfully diagnosed another factory issue before the specialists even arrived, he sat me down and said, "Michael, you ever think about going back to school?" I laughed. "I don't have the time or the money." "Well, that's a damn shame," he said, "because you're smarter than half the people running this place. And if you don't use that brain of yours, you're wasting your life." His words stayed with me. That night, I applied for night school. It wasn't easy. I worked my shifts, studied until dawn, and repeated the cycle. I barely slept, but I refused to quit. Years later, when I graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, Lawson was there, standing at the back of the hall, grinning like a proud father. After getting my degree, doors started opening. I was promoted from the factory floor to an engineering supervisor, then to plant operations manager, then to senior director of engineering. I didn't just work, I innovated. I developed new efficiency models that saved the company millions. I spearheaded automation improvements that put young tech ahead of its competitors. And then the CEO, an old-school businessman named Mr. Langston, noticed me. "You're not just an engineer, Carter," he told me. "You think like a leader." He made me a board member at Young Tech despite the fact that some of the other executives scoffed at my working-class background. But Langston didn't care about pedigree. He cared about results. When he retired, he didn't choose one of the Ivy League suits to take over. He chose me. And now here I stood, the CEO of Young Tech Corp., the very company Olivia's husband thought he controlled. I looked at them. Olivia, still clinging to the illusion of superiority, and Nathan, slowly piecing together his impending doom. The irony was delicious. Olivia had left me because she thought I had no future. Nathan had taken my place, believing he was the better man, and yet, I was the one in power. I glanced at Rachel. She didn't say a word, but I could see the pride in her eyes. She had met me when I was still climbing, when I had nothing to prove but everything to gain. Unlike Olivia, she had believed in me, not because of a title, not because of wealth, but because of the man I was becoming. That more than anything made my success feel complete. And as Nathan's forced laughter faded into silence, I knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, the real humiliation would begin. After I delivered my cryptic statement, "Well, he's unemployed starting tomorrow," the air between us thickened. Olivia blinked, a flicker of uncertainty flashing in her eyes. "But Nathan." He laughed. Loud, arrogant, and dismissive. "You've got quite the imagination," Nathan said, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "Let me guess, Michael. You work security here? Or maybe you're part of the catering staff. No offense, but you don't exactly fit the corporate mold." He smirked, glancing at my suit as if it was borrowed. He had no idea. Olivia leaned into him as if to absorb his confidence and gave me a familiar, condescending look. The same one she used to give when she told me I wasn't going anywhere in life. "Michael always had this habit of dreaming big," Olivia said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Even when we were together, he used to talk about making something of himself. It was cute, really." Rachel, standing by my side, squeezed my hand lightly. It was a small gesture, but one that grounded me. I could feel her unspoken support, her silent message, "Don't let them get to you." I smiled, not out of amusement, but because I already knew how this was going to end. "That's right, Olivia," I said calmly. "I've always believed in aiming high, and I guess in some ways, I owe you thanks for pushing me to do better." She tilted her head. "Oh, if you hadn't left me, I might not have been as motivated to succeed." For the first time, she hesitated. That wasn't the response she had expected. Nathan chuckled again, shaking his head. "Man, this is priceless. Olivia told me all about you. How you barely scraped by after high school. How she had to carry you for years. Sounds exhausting." Olivia grinned, sipping her wine. I kept telling him to be ambitious, to take risks, but some people are just stuck." Rachel finally spoke, her voice even but firm. "And yet, here he is. While you're standing here, spending your night talking about him." Olivia stiffened just for a second, but I saw it. Nathan's smirk faltered too, but he quickly recovered. "Right?" Nathan said, his tone patronizing. "Listen, I don't mean to be rude, Michael. It's just look at where we are. This is a high-level corporate event. Executives, investors, innovators, the best of the best." He gestured toward the room where men in designer suits and women in elegant gowns mingled over cocktails and business deals. "People here have built their lives around education, connections, strategy," he continued. "It's not about hard work anymore. It's about who you know, about being smarter than the competition. And let's be honest," Nathan looked me up and down, "you don't really belong here." A lesser man might have flinched. A younger me might have clenched his fists and walked away. But I had spent years in boardrooms where men like Nathan tried to outmaneuver me with their pedigrees and perfect resumes. I had learned how to stay calm in the face of arrogance. So I just smiled. "That's an interesting perspective," I said. "Tell me, Nathan, what exactly do you do at Young Tech?" His chest puffed up. "I'm the head of corporate strategy. I oversee high-level acquisitions, partnerships, and financial growth models for the company." I nodded slowly. "So you spend your time making business deals, moving numbers around on a screen, talking to the right people?" Nathan smirked. "Exactly. And that's why I'm successful. Connections make the world go round, Michael. Not just working hard like some factory grunt." There it was. He had no idea. Not a single clue. "You know," I said, taking a sip of my own drink, "I find it funny how people love to talk about who they know, but they never stop to ask who really makes things happen." Nathan frowned slightly, but Olivia rolled her eyes. "Here we go," she muttered. "See, I've always admired the people who build things," I continued. "Not just the ones who talk about numbers and networking. I mean the engineers, the designers, the developers, the ones who actually create the products that companies like Young Tech thrive on." Nathan let out a short laugh. "Oh, please, those guys are replaceable. There are thousands of engineers out there. But the ones who close the big deals, the ones who control the money, those are the real decision makers." I tilted my head. "Are they?" Nathan's confidence wavered for the first time. Rachel smiled, catching on to what I was doing. "Let me ask you something, Nathan," I said, my voice still perfectly composed. "What would happen if Young Tech lost its best engineers? Its top developers? If, say, the entire research and development department decided to walk out tomorrow?" Nathan scoffed. "That would never happen. But if it did," he hesitated. "I mean, we'd hire new ones. Adjust. Adapt." "Really?" I nodded. "And how long would that take? 6 months? A year? Maybe more? And what happens to the revenue in the meantime? What happens to the stockholders? The investors? The board? Nathan's smirk was gone now. I took another step closer, lowering my voice just slightly. And what if the CEO, the one person who actually understands how every department functions, the one person who actually built the company's biggest innovations, decided you weren't necessary anymore? Nathan's face paled. I leaned in just enough so that only he and Olivia could hear. Because let me tell you something, Nathan, I said, voice deadly calm. You don't run Young Tech. You don't own Young Tech. You're just an overpaid middleman playing business executive. And tomorrow morning, you're going to find out just how little you actually matter. Nathan swallowed hard. Olivia looked between us, her confident mask slipping. You're lying, she whispered. I straightened up, smiling again. Am I? A moment of silence stretched between us. Then the room's microphone buzzed to life. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome Young Tech Corporation's president and CEO, Michael Carter, to the stage for his opening remarks. The color drained from Olivia's face. Nathan froze, his expression shifting from arrogance to sheer disbelief. I turned away from them without another word and walked toward the stage. As I stepped up, the applause rang out and I could feel their eyes on me. The stunned, speechless humiliation. And I hadn't even started yet. The moment my name was announced, the applause erupted. The room filled with the highest executives, investors, and respected figures of Young Tech Corp turned their attention to the stage. I adjusted my tie and strode forward, each step deliberate, each movement carrying a quiet authority that could no longer be questioned. The murmurs followed. Low voices buzzing with realization, with surprise, with admiration, but I wasn't focused on them. I was focused on Olivia and Nathan. I didn't have to turn around to know what was happening behind me. I could picture it clearly. Olivia, standing frozen, her perfectly constructed image of superiority crumbling before her eyes. And Nathan? I could almost hear the way his breath hitched, the sudden weight of dread pressing down on his shoulders as he realized fully and completely what I had meant when I said he'd be unemployed tomorrow. The arrogance he had worn like armor was now useless because suddenly